Ben back again, and this time the Habs got the half win against the Ottawa Senators, losing 4-3 in a shootout. And honestly, that's far more than they deserved. So we start out with the first period, which, to be honest, the first period and all of the second period until the last 2 minutes, Ottawa completely ran the Habs show. There really isn't anything good to say about it other than Al Montoya looked fantastic. One thing I did notice early on is when the Senators started hitting hard and early. Max Pacioretty actually laid out a guy. I didn't know he had that in him. I didn't know he could actually hit people. But yeah, he actually gave a pretty good hit to, I want to say, Weidman. I noticed a couple times Greg Pattern had a pretty good game, and there's a couple times where he pinched or came up in the rush where he actually looked okay offensively. So his play last night just kind of helped reaffirm my belief that we've never really given him all that great of a look in the past. Anyway, going into the second, Al Montoya is still looking great. Habs not really doing much. They killed a couple penalties. Then towards the end of the second, we see them get a power play. I think it was the second of their game. They'd had one power play before that, or no, third. They had two power plays before that. The second power play they looked fantastic. Weber had looked like 15 shots, and he still didn't manage to score on one. But towards the end of the second, we see them. They don't start all that well, mostly because Michel Therrien had gotten his blender back out and decided to just mix up all the lines, including the power play ones. But then, with about 15 seconds left in that power play, we see Jeff Petrie, who had just returned from an injury, come in, snipe a shot from the point, and now the Senators only have a 1-goal lead. And we head that way into the third period, where I think when the third period started, both coaches were like, so neither of us are going to play defense, right? Right? Sound good? Yeah, because the third period was wide open. We see Arturi Lehkonen got his first goal as a Hab, just shoveling home some garbage after Philip Deneau drives to the net and kind of just bashes around, and then Lehkonen sees a loose puck, just gives it a little, and then it just crawls up Craig Anderson's back and into the net. So then it's tie game 2-2. And then another power play and another Jeff Petrie goal, a blast from the point, and the Habs go up 3-2. First lead of the game. Not long after, Montoya had to make about 4 or 5 amazing saves because the Habs were, again, looking like shit. And eventually that does catch up to them, and the Senators tie it up 3-3. We go to overtime, where it is just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, wide open again. Nobody scores. Both goalies make some great saves in overtime, actually. It was pretty fun to watch. Both had some pretty nice saves. We go into a shootout, which is probably my least favorite part of hockey when it comes to tiebreakers, because there's no less representative thing of team skill than the shootout. Although the way it ended this game, that kind of represented how the game went. We start. The Habs' first shooter is Radulov, and he has a gorgeous little deke to the backhand, and he scores to tie it up because Kyle Turris had gotten the goal for the Sens in their first go. Then we see it go to a fourth round because nobody scores the rest of the time, and Ottawa guy gets his goal. So Michel Therrien sends out his favorite little guy, David Darnay, to take the shot. And he skates in, looks like he tries to fake the shot, and then completely whiffs on it. Not a great start, Davey. So then the Senators ended up winning 4-3 in a shootout, which, to be fair, was the outcome that should have happened. The Canadiens had no business being in that game. They were lucky, very, very lucky to get a point out of that. Al Montoya has been looking great. So takeaways from the game, Alex Radulov looked fantastic the entire game, no matter who he was with. The entire time he looked great. He was working hard on the forecheck the entire game, and he had a lot of good chances. He even rang one off the crossbar or one of the far posts one time, and he could not have been any closer to getting a goal. But they'll come eventually, just because he's been looking fantastic. Something I didn't love was about 25 minutes in, it was utterly predictable, though. Michel Therrien decided to just change all of his lines around, and I think Lehkonen somehow ended up onto the fourth line, and Byron for a while there was on the first line, and it was rough to watch. One thing I wouldn't mind seeing is if he's gonna change the lines, bring Plekanec to the first line with Pacioretty and Gallagher, and then have Galchenyuk, Radulov, and Radulov, and Lehkonen on the second line, because that second line would be insane skill wise. And if you turn a second line loose of Radulov, Galchenyuk, and Lehkonen, I can just envision like highlight reel goal after highlight reel goal if they actually end up making that line. And then of course, Pacioretty, Plekanec, Gallagher. Gallagher will make any line he's on better, and then he's always been fairly good with Pacioretty. So I just think that would be the ideal top two lines if you're going to change all the lines around. Defenseman wise, Beaulieu and Patterson, the two young guys, they both looked fantastic again. Their second game, they looked great. There were some times out there where Weber looked slow, and there was one on that 5-on-3 penalty kill, which they did end up killing, which was great to watch. But I remember one time they had a chance. It was early on in the kill, and they had a chance to clear it, and Weber got the puck, and he just fed a nice, beautiful tape-to-tape pass to whoever was on the point for the Senators at that point. I mean, they ended up killing the penalty off, but I just remember that sticking in my mind. But on the whole, he looked good for most of the game, but I still miss PK. Yeah, not a great game for the Habs. They didn't look very good most of the game. Third period, they kind of came to life. Then they got a point where they probably shouldn't have gotten a point. And a lot of that is due to the play of Al Montoya. He's looked great as a backup, filling in for Price, who hopefully is not out for much longer with this flu, which apparently required him being put on the injury reserve. I've never heard of that happening for flu, but I guess it's still a flu. Anyway, so next game is Tuesday against the defending Stanley Cup champions, the Pittsburgh Penguins. So it'll be interesting to see how they play against them. They got to start coming out flying a bit more than they have been, because both games offensively they haven't been convincing. Like even in the Buffalo game, they won 4-1, sure, but they weren't like pressuring Buffalo like you think they could, because Buffalo is not exactly a good team. You'd think with the amount of talent that's on the top two lines now, the Habs finally have a top six, like a legitimate top six. They should be able to just skate circles around a team like Buffalo, but even in that game, they didn't look that great. Anyway, we'll see what happens. See you guys next time.